Hey everyone, it's Friday, April 22nd. Let's talk PlayStation. Alright, we got a lot of news stories to cover, so just real quick, I wanted to thank everyone once again for 200 episodes of Let's Talk PlayStation. I really appreciate that. Just to answer a few of the comments of last week, all the little intros that I did throughout the video, that's not like something new we're doing, that was just like a special occasion. I'm surprised that wasn't a little more obvious, but it's alright, I still love you guys. Alright, but really, we got like a lot to talk about. So first news story, there's a little rumor going around from industry insider Shinobi602, or however you say his fucking username, that Horizon Zero Dawn is probably going to get delayed into 2017. That's basically what he's saying right now. There's really no other comment other than that. It's probably going to get delayed. This is, of course, rumor, so take it with a grain of salt, but, you know, maybe it'll happen. It certainly sounds like something that would happen. At the end part of his tweet, he says that that it's still going to look really good on PS4K, which some people kind of took it as like, oh, the game's getting delayed because they're adding, you know, PS4K special goodness to it or what have you. And he followed up by saying, oh, no, that's not necessarily the case, that most of the game was still developed on the original PlayStation 4 and everything's still fine, but the game will obviously have a version of the PS4K in it that's going to look even better. So, but yeah, that's basically what happened there. Now it's time to get into the real meat and potatoes of this episode, which is PS4K. We got a whole crap load of things to talk about regarding this thing, but here's like a little preface news story, which is actually also pretty interesting. So basically back in 2005, at the DICE event, there was a private dinner between Shuhei Yoshida and the gaming veteran, industry veteran, Lorne Lanning. I think that's how you say his last name. Basically, they were having a private dinner, and this little conversation took place, which is that Lanning asked, what does the PlayStation 5 look like? And Shuhei Yoshida basically said, you mean if? And Lanning followed that up with, whoa, are you willing to say that on stage? And Shuhei responded again saying, yeah, it's an if. So basically, Shuhei Yoshida is outright saying, at least back then in 2015, mind you, this was back in February, back then he was basically saying, oh, we don't really know if we're doing a PlayStation 5, I guess. Now, this is, of course, was a private dinner, so this is why we're hearing about it just now, and it also didn't happen back in 2015 at the actual DICE event on stage. That was just a private dinner thing where he said, oh, would you say that on stage? And that never actually happened or anything. But yeah, we're just finding this out now, and that's what's putting this whole PS4K thing into such greater perspective, I guess, because originally, and especially with the console industry, typically, you know, a console will come out and it only takes 1 to 2 years, if that, for the console manufacturer to start looking at their next hardware and what they're going to be doing, and yeah, absolutely, it'll be the full-on next generational leap. They'll, you know, when Sony released PlayStation 1, only like a year went by, I believe, where they started working on PS2. Sony's on record to say that once they released the PlayStation 3, only like a year and a half later, they started the process of PlayStation 4. And this is true with every other hardware manufacturer. That's just how it works. But obviously, technology is moving rather fast. The console industry has to change at some point. I've always said that. We all kind of know that has to happen at some point, and that's what's putting PS4K into such better perspective, because Shuhei is like, oh, well, you know, we don't really know what we're going to do, and the reason why they didn't know that is because they are doing this kind of mid-cycle refresh, which is going into our next news story, which is that we have a ton of new details about this, again, theoretical new PlayStation. So again, it's like there's so much details that came out that I had to pretty much like do a little cheat sheet on my phone basically to read off every single thing. So basically, this was Giant Bomb. Giant Bomb got the hold on this. GiantBomb.com got some documents about the new PlayStation 4. They're pretty much saying, yeah, once again, this is entirely legit. We're just hearing this from so many different sources now. Now Giant Bomb says they've got official documents about this that were used internally at Sony. This is like absolutely probably happening. So here are some bullet points basically regarding what's going on here. Right up front, the upgraded PlayStation 4 is codenamed internally as Neo. It contains an upgraded CPU, GPU, and RAM. I'm probably going to be showing you a little screenshot of the specs, because this is also apparently what we know. We do actually have some specs for this thing. Sony is taking strict measures to ensure that the player base between these systems is not split up. Neo price point is rumored to be $399. Starting in October, every PlayStation 4 game is required to ship with a base mode for the current PS4 and a Neo mode for the stronger PlayStation 4. So basically every single game from now on, Sony will be mandating it. Like, if you're going to make a PlayStation 4 game, it has to support the current PS4, it has to support the more powerful one, and it has to take advantage of the more powerful one. Games running on Neo can take advantage of the new hardware by increasing the resolution, the frame rate, or the visual fidelity. Sony's offering suggestions to developers on how they can reach higher resolutions, but they're also allowing a little bit of freedom with developers on how they can approach the extra horsepower. Sony is also requiring the frame rate of games on Neo, they must be equal to or greater than the frame rate on the regular PS4 version. So Sony's got a lot of strict mandates for this thing. Also, Neo will not replace the current PlayStation 4, but it will coexist with it. They will still use the same PlayStation Store, UI, literally everything. Nothing will be different. You'll say use this new PlayStation 4, boot it up, it's going to look exactly the same. Everything's going to be completely the same. There is no such thing as Neo-only games. Developers are not allowed to separate players when playing online. It is complete full compatibility. Developers cannot offer exclusive Neo-only features, but they can include an enhanced feature. So, for example, say a split-screen mode. If the game has split-screen, both systems have to have the split-screen feature, but Neo can offer something like 4-player split-screen, while the original PS4 version would only have, say, 2-player split-screen. But it can't be a situation where Neo has split screen and the regular PlayStation 4 doesn't. Peripheral support must also have complete parity between both systems. The current documents are also saying that developers can release Neo-ready games before the Neo actually comes out, so developers can kind of get this done ahead of time. Older games can take advantage of Neo hardware if the developer, of course, wants to patch their current game, but this is very much in line with what Sony's trying to do, is forward compatibility moving forward. And these are some of the bigger bullet points we really have here. And I mean, honestly, you look at it, and you also look at the specs, which are also pretty interesting. It makes complete and total sense. And this is like, again, I'm not trying to be a prick here and saying this over and over again, but like, I called this shit. Like, it just makes complete total sense to me. And what's even more surprising to me is that this makes complete total sense to me, but it seems like more often than not, wherever you're reading this, comments, whatever people are talking about this, nobody seems to understand this, and people are like getting super pissy and weird about it. Because it's quite obvious from this current document that Sony is approaching this in the best way possible, which is that there is absolutely no reason to trade in your current PlayStation 4. You're not being sideswiped. They're not devaluing current owners of the system. You're not in any way, shape, or form being given the thumbs up, basically, which is, again, how some people always seem to approach these things. People just think multi-billion dollar corporations are out to fuck the consumer every single day. It's like, calm the fuck down, dude. This is probably the best way Sony could do this, if this is what they're actually going to do, which is a mid-cycle refresh, which is something we typically don't see in the games industry. They're being very strict with it. They're basically saying, listen, complete compatibility. Every single PlayStation 4 game has to play on both these systems. But it's, the whole point of the mid-cycle refresh is to offer a little bit extra horsepower, and it's like, oh, what can you get with the extra horsepower? Well, it's like, okay, you cannot do Neo-only games. You can't release a game only on the new system. You can't do extra features or anything. You can't separate the player base. There's nothing extra in terms of the UI, the interface, the PlayStation Store. Everything's the same. You're just getting some extra juice for resolution, frame rate, and visual fidelity. And that's, like, totally how the market's been dictating it. Like, I don't know why people don't seem to understand this. They're obviously just not getting it because this is, of course, the console industry, and the console industry typically is like, consoles released, they're out in the market for 5 to 7 years, who knows how long. That's the one set hardware that they are. Maybe the box gets revised physically every once in a while, but the performance, of course, stays the same, and game compatibility is obviously the same because it's the same hardware. And then a new generational leap happens, and so on and so forth. That's how it's been. And since it's finally changing, people are kind of up in arms about it because they don't really, I don't know, I guess they're just not understanding it. They're just not seeing it from the point of view that Sony's kind of having this. I mean, that's the thing, for the past how many years since PlayStation 4 and Xbox One have been on the market, people all around have been complete and total assholes and bitches about this, which is like, oh, the consoles are underpowered, they're too weak, they're mid-range PCs at best, they can't do 1080p, they can't do 60 frames per second, blah 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 blah. They finally have like one manufacturer's kind of stepping forward and saying, okay, well, here's an answer to it. The market's dictating that hardware needs to release more frequently. We can release a stronger box that gives you all that shit you've finally been asking for, and hey, it's got full compatibility, and people are still like up in arms about it. You know what I'm saying? Like the same people that are calling PS4 and X1 underpowered are the same people that are complaining that a newer, stronger PS4 is coming out, and also coming out in a way that it's like you don't have to buy it whatsoever, full game compatibility and all that stuff. But it's like it's like I don't know how people aren't seeing it, because like this is something that is like currently very much so a real thing with, like, say, the phone industry, which is what I've always kind of compared it to when I said like, oh, maybe this is where consoles will go, which is just more frequent releases with forward compatibility in mind. I always compared it to like the phone industry, like, you know, like a new like iPhone comes out every single year. Android phones are releasing constantly, but you know, you visit their app stores and you can download apps. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's pretty much full compatibility there. It's just that, like, at some point there will like finally be a cutoff. Like, you know, if you still have like the first iPhone, for example, you're not going to be able to download much from the App Store. But that's a long time ago. You know, certain apps can still have some pretty decent compatibility for iPhones pretty far back. You know, a few years. And it's like, that's kind of what consoles are turning into, I guess. You know, more frequent release a new box more frequently. Again, that's kind of what people are like looking at it right now as sort of a mid-cycle refresh. Like, we're, you know, how many years into PlayStation 4? Certainly too soon for a PlayStation 5, but it's like kind of a sweet spot in the middle. So let's say theoretically there was a PlayStation 5. Well, this would be like a good stopgap to give consumers like an extra option to possibly get better visuals out of their games, and they can enjoy the extra performance. And that's the thing, like, again, like, since Sony's approaching it in a way where it's like you don't have to buy this new hardware, you can still use your current PlayStation 4, every single game's going to work on it. And Sony's being very strict and being very strict with developers and saying you can't gimp current owners. And that's like the best part about this, and the best part of how they're doing this is having strict quality control with developers. You can't make the Neo version have extra features. You can't split the player base up online. The only thing it's strictly for is resolution, frame rate, and visual fidelity wherever the developer chooses to possibly increase it. Again, there's still a little bit of developer freedom there, but it's like that's the one thing people have been complaining for the longest time with PS4 and X1: resolution, frame rate. Oh my god, these new consoles can't hit 1080p 60 frames. Oh my lord! And now there's finally an answer to it, and once again, people continue to bitch. It's baffling to me, but this is apparently like a real thing. This is absolutely where it's going, and it makes complete and total sense to me. People are also being very I think a little too entitled by saying like, "Ooh, maybe there should be a trade-in program or something," and maybe Sony will do something like that. That would certainly be pretty interesting. But again, like I just look at it in sort of like the smartphone market. Like, you just phones are $400, $500, $600, and contracts are kind of a thing of the past. So you can either do a payment plan to buy your phone nowadays, or you have to pay full price for your phone. And if you want a new phone, I mean, sometimes they'll offer trade-in programs, or you just sell your phone on eBay and buy the new phone. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why I feel Sony's doing this, because the market has just been dictating it recently. Technology is moving so rapidly now. Consumer demand is through the roof in terms of wanting the latest and greatest, and especially with gamers nowadays and how PC gaming is on the rise recently. It's just becoming more commonplace that people are pushing for people are pushing for greater performance in games, higher frame rates, higher resolutions. It's just again, it makes complete and total sense to me. It's funny, like, this was supposed to be more informational, but it like turned into a rant, because that's all I'm doing now. It's just like I'm reading all these articles, and I'm like trying to make sure I'm caught up on everything and whatnot, and I look at all the comments, and I'm just like, what the fuck are these people on about? Like, oh my god, people are bitching and moaning about everything. I don't know, man. But we'll find out more once Sony actually makes a formal announcement of this thing. And that's the thing, we don't really know when this thing's going to come out. They're saying October is when every game developed thereon has to have like a base mode and a PS4, or a base mode and a Neo mode. So I would assume quite soon we would get an announcement of this. Maybe E3, maybe a little bit after, I don't know. But you can't expect this PS4K, whatever it's going to be called, to be too far off. So we'll probably hear more about it soon. Anyway, those are just like the major things to talk about this past week. Again, like this is a pretty packed episode, a lot of interesting stuff going on, and certainly like stuff that we like never would have saw coming. Like again, this whole PS4K thing is like such a new thing for the industry. Like a lot of things recently have been like, the industry's definitely changing. You know, you got virtual reality, and now this possible idea of like mid-cycle refreshes with PS4K, and even now Microsoft rumors are finally starting to stir up a little bit about possibly a new, stronger, more powerful Xbox as well. Those rumors aren't as prominent as the PS4K one. The PS4K one is like for sure absolutely happening. But either way, obviously all manufacturers are looking at sort of what, you know, where the industry is going and where it's changing, and what it traditionally has been is kind of becoming a thing of the past. So it's exciting stuff. We'll keep talking about it as all these things come up. Anyway, the Ryan on Gaming topic this past week was, are video games the best storytelling medium? Somebody asked me that, you know, with games nowadays, because they're interactable, and, you know, sometimes certain games that this person has played, they feel like the stories being told in games are sometimes better than movies and books and stuff like that. So that's actually a pretty interesting conversation. And by all means, I encourage you all to check that out. Also, the God of War Let's Play is going well. It's going beautifully well. And PlayStation Now is actually a lot better than I thought it was. So by all means, also watch that. And that's about it. No update for you on like a possible Ratchet and Clank review. I've just been very busy. I have lots of work and stuff. And so just bear with me. It'll probably take me a little while, but I'm sure the people that want to play Ratchet and Clank are probably playing it already anyway. It's Ratchet and Clank, and it's a good game. I'm just happy that there's finally a new platformer to play. Anyway, that concludes this week's episode of Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Badecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I'll see you guys next Friday.